Is it okay or even possible to change the trajectory of your writing career? Can you change your mind about what you write, how you write, or what you do when the story is finished? Or to put it another way, can you reconcile when you change your mind with the ambitions from your past? In today's episode, I'm going to share my writing story with you, so you can hopefully see that when you make changes for the right reasons, then it becomes so much easier not to question them. So let's get to it. Hello and welcome to Salome's Writer Therapy, where you and your writing connect. My writing journey started 8 years ago in 2016 when I quit my corporate job. I was facing some health struggles and my husband and I agreed that the corporate environment wasn't good for me. But then there I was, jobless and scared. I was so scared to even look for another job because what if the same thing happened again and my health suffered even more? Now, that time of my life was filled with a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, and I made a lot of choices, both good and bad, because of those fears and doubts. And you will see some examples of it throughout the episode and how I got to where I am today. Alright, so anyway, back to 8 years ago. So, I've always loved reading. Okay, I know there are a lot of authors out there that have these stories about how they've been reading since they were little kids and dreaming of becoming writers one day. Now, I'm not going to say that my story is 100% unique, but I actually started reading in my early teens, and I read mostly fantasy or paranormal romance. Reading became my refuge, my escape from my daily life. And when I was about 17 or 18, I had this thought that flashed through my mind that it'll be so cool to write a paranormal romance someday. But I didn't think on it much or dwell on it. But in that moment, when I was jobless, without prospects, and frankly, with nothing else to do, I thought, why not now? And that's when I started writing. Now, I knew next to nothing about writing or publishing back then. I mean, I read a single writing craft book and I sat down to write, pantsing my rough draft over the next 9 months. And then in June of 2018, I published my first novel. Now, that book has since been unpublished, and I'll tell you why in just a second, but I had done it. I had started, finished, and published a book. I was so excited, so high on the success that I've achieved in that moment that I forgot, okay, maybe ignored is the better word to use. I ignored that I was in way over my head. I knew next to nothing. I wrote and published that book basically on a whim, but I was hooked. I wanted to become a famous author with millions of copies sold and fans all over the world. Now, as I look back, it's no surprise to me that my first book bombed, like completely. I did all the publishing no-nos. The things, if you've done any kind of research on the subject, you know you should be careful of, right? I designed my own cover, I did self-edits with only a professional proofreader, I did no marketing whatsoever. Yeah. I truly believed that my readers would just magically appear and find my book and love it. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do these things and also have success. But at that point in my career, I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't a skilled or experienced designer, and I wasn't an experienced or professional editor. So by making those choices, they were not the right choices to launch my career with. Now, after that fiasco came my first pivot. I realized that if I wanted to make this career work, I need to know how to do it. So over the next 3 years, I learned everything I could about writing. Craft, story, publishing, everything. And during those 3 years, I also finished writing 5 more novels. Now, as I said before, I was filled with so much doubt and fear in that time of my life that I tried so many different things, including writing different genres, but I was never truly satisfied with the results. And that's why I haven't published another book in over half a decade, because I was holding myself back. Perfectionism, fear of failure, fear of repeating the mistakes that I made with that first book, believing I wasn't good enough, being afraid that because my first book failed, I can't get back on track. And if any of these feels familiar, I got you. I am the last person to judge someone on holding back from action because of fear. But the thing is, if you are the thing that's holding you back from finishing that story or that novel or from publishing your book, then you are the only one that stands even a chance to possibly fix it. And that was pivot number 2 for me. I had to start at the beginning. I realized that I was making choices based on what I thought I should do or what I believed was best for my writing and my career because of what other people were doing. Because all the research and the learning that I did in those 3 years, it was great, and I don't regret doing it for my career as a whole, but it did have a detrimental effect on my actual writing. It was so easy to follow someone else's advice, or even their path, just to see if it will work for me. Which is good, I suppose, because I experimented a lot in those years. But I started overanalyzing every little thing I did. I wanted to make everything just a little bit better before I tried to publish again, before I put myself out there again, before I risk failing again. But I was so caught up in going and learning this thing and that thing that I didn't use the knowledge that I garnered from all those experiments to my own advantage. I didn't even stop to think of what actually did work for me. I didn't know how to say that, yeah, this might work for this person, but it's not working for me. Is there an alternative? I didn't think that I could come up with a way that could get me the success that I wanted. I didn't think that I knew enough to come up with a way. So I thought I had to just do what other people are doing, and if it's not successful, then I'm to blame. So I just kept going and going after the next thing that I needed to learn to become that perfect writer, until I realized that I was trying so hard to live the life of strangers. And so I started the journey to truly find out what I wanted, what I needed, and what worked for me. And by doing that, my perspective shifted on my writing based on who I am, what I want, and where I am in my life. Now, here are a few of the things that I learned about myself and my writing. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is because sometimes you need to look at the not so pretty parts of yourself to truly understand how to get to the life you want. You have to see what things you should face, what things you need to overcome, and what things you have to work around to get to your dreams. I'm making myself vulnerable here because I want to show you that it's not just about looking at or obsessing over the problem, but also about finding the solution that works best for you. And sometimes the things we need to work on to get the results that we want has nothing to do with our skills or our abilities, but about our mindset or how we perceive the situation or the process or even ourselves. So here's a couple of things that I learned about myself. I can't work to deadlines. I get too flustered and completely overwhelmed, and then I freeze. I needed a writing schedule that allowed me flexibility without judgment. Another thing I learned was that I wasn't writing because I loved it anymore. Remember how I said that I wrote multiple novels in various genres? Well, that was me trying to find the perfect story. And as you can't see me, I air quotes around perfect because there's no such thing, right? There is no such thing as a perfect story, but I was looking for it. And I was looking for that perfect story that would launch my career, but I didn't enjoy it. And unfortunately, that was evident in my writing. The stories I wrote, they were good. They were publishable, but they didn't have any heart. And I am too much of a perfectionist to put that out into the world. So I needed to find the thing that brings me joy, that excites me about writing. And for me, that is writing epic fantasy. Another thing that I learned, I suck at dealing with pressure. Now, I know that a lot of people say that they don't work well under pressure, but I kind of take it to an extreme. If there's any kind of pressure involved, I back off. Just the thought of you have to finish the book in order to publish it was enough to send me into a tailspin of doubt and what ifs. Because over those 3 years, I've learned how it's supposed to be done. I always think of my first novel as kind of a fluke because I didn't know enough to know how much I sucked. And alright, truth time. The book that I published was good. It wasn't great, but it wasn't a piece of garbage. But since I learned all the things that I learned, I can see all those iffy things that shouldn't be there because now I know better, right? So for me, that first one was kind of just jumping over a hurdle without looking, right? Now I'm looking and I can't drown out the crowd or see how many hurdles is left in front of me or all the runners beside me. I've got all eyes on all of that. And it just, the pressure to get it done and to get it perfect and to get it out, and it really was enough to send me into a tailspin of doubt and what ifs and oh my goodness, I don't think I can do this. So I had to find a way to remove the pressure from my writing so that I could focus on the stories that I was trying to tell and on the joy that I actually have for writing. So for me, that means no publishing plan. Not until the book is finished, at least. Because if I have to go sit down and make a publishing plan, even just 6 months out or a year out, I can't do it. Because along with this problem of sucking to deal with pressure, I also have that problem with deadlines. And I have this thing, and I don't know how many of you can actually relate to this, but even if it's a flexible plan, and you say, okay, I'm going to publish by the end of the year, right? It's flexible. I don't have to stick with it. I can postpone it. And, even if that is the way that you look at it, right? In my head, my brain is going, that's a deadline. I know you said it's flexible, but you wrote it down, it's on a sticky note, it's on a calendar, that's a deadline. And what deadlines do to me, they stop me right in my tracks because then my focus is on the deadline and not on what I'm doing right now. So instead of immersing myself in the story that I'm busy writing or giving myself the space to brainstorm or to fully focus on the editing or whatever, my mind is always looking at that future planned date, that perceived deadline. And so I realized that's not going to work for me. So I decided I am not going to plan ahead because that's the only way for me to actually get my writing done. And finally, I learned that I am uniquely me. How I write is up to me. I have no one to answer to. So why was I making all these choices based on the should-haves of other people? I let go of judging myself for breaking the unwritten rules of writing, like you shouldn't edit as you go, or you should write every day, or you should have a solid writing routine, etc. So I decided to write however I wanted or needed to in order to get the story done. Now, during this time of self-discovery, I didn't finish a lot of writing projects because for me it was more important to find direction and clarity. And it was also at this point, maybe like 2 years ago, that I also started teaching other writers what I've learned over the years about writing and about being the writer that you are meant to be, about facing your fears and working through all the doubts that you struggle with. And so last year I started Salome's Writer Therapy because I realized from my dealings with the writers that I was teaching, my students, that there are so many people who look at their writing with blinders on, like staring down this tunnel toward publishing, but forgetting that getting published or having your book published is not the end of the path. It's the beginning. And to make it there, you need to be true to yourself. Otherwise, you will fizzle out or drown before you even know it. So this is where my third pivot happened just a few weeks ago. My third pivot is me writing again, but joyfully. It is me writing without the pressure of the path forward or the future planning. Instead, I focus on my love of the craft and how I can help others, maybe even you, to finish their stories. And it's a journey that I would love to share with you so that you can write the stories that you want to write at a pace that works for you and with a plan that sets you on the path to your own publishing beginning. And so that you can avoid the mistakes and missteps that I make along the way. So join me in the upcoming weeks and months as I plan out, plot, and write my heart's story. That story that I should have written years ago but was too afraid of. And please make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on next week's episode where I will give you a look at how I plan to track my progress and schedule my writing going forward. And so, I want to answer the question of whether you can or should change the direction of your writing career. Now, the easy answer is yes, of course you can. The more complex one is whether you should. And it's a very personal choice. I changed things in my writing career multiple times over the years. I went from wanting to traditionally publish to self-publishing. I went from wanting to write paranormal romance to wanting to write epic fantasy, with a couple of other genres in the mix as well. I went from a strict publishing plan to deciding to take it a day at a time. I even went from freelance editing services to teaching other people about writing. The thing to remember is that as long as the shift or the change is because you are being true to yourself, then it will all work out. Now, I'm not saying this as a guarantee because sometimes things don't work out, but by staying connected to who you are, what you want, and where you are in your life will increase the chances of you finding your success, whatever that might look like. And remember, you can always change your mind. Nothing is set in stone. I published a book half a decade ago, and now I'm basically starting over. Do I feel like I've lost time? Sure. But do I feel like I've wasted time? Absolutely not. It was the path I was meant to take because it led me here, to the place where I know that I have value to share with the world, with both my teaching and my writing. So I just want to thank you for listening to my story, and hopefully I will see you in the weeks to come as I share my 2.0 second try writing journey with you. Now, before I go, if you're struggling to stay motivated to write, click on the screen or in the link in the description below to check out my episode on staying motivated and connected. So, until next time, may your creativity flow freely and your fingers dance upon the keys. Keep writing with joy and stay connected. Cheers.